forward to hearing that. But I was asked to do a brief introduction to the importance of conducting qualitative research, particularly in the areas that we're all interested in. And I would say that that area of interest is around people, young people, children, and adults who, for various reasons, have had difficulties accessing the mainstream of society. So people with disabilities, for instance, those who are living in poverty, those maybe from scheduled tribe, scheduled caste, girls, and many others within our societies who find themselves feeling that they're on the margins of the society that we've created. Because we're interested in this group of people, it's more important than ever that we demonstrate that we're respectful of them and of their needs. And showing respect in part means making sure that we listen to their opinions, that we understand their lives by engaging with them, not just trying to find out at a distance. Now, what I'm not saying is that we wouldn't ever conduct research that uses survey approaches and quantitative measures, because such large-scale systems still have their value. There's no doubt about that. Large-scale population studies, for instance, can be very helpful to our understanding of situations. But far more important for us, I think, is to actually ensure that the perspectives of the people we're interested in are brought to the fore. Simply reading statistical tables can identify a problem, but it tells us virtually nothing about the people who are experiencing those difficulties. So if we want to know about the lives of a child with a disability, for instance, we need to understand that in the context of their family, possibly their school, their teachers' perceptions, the views and opinions of professionals who work with this group and this individual. And therefore, our approach to that is best achieved by using qualitative methods. In an ideal situation, that would involve face-to-face methods, conducting interviews, for instance, or running focus groups, doing observations in classrooms, or doing observations in clinics, getting on the ground to see the situation for ourselves. Now, we know that over the last 18 months, that's been increasingly difficult because of the global pandemic. It's been increasingly the case that we've had to rely on technology such as that we're using today. And as we all know, even using this technology places a bit of a barrier between the interviewer and the interviewee. If I meet somebody in person, I can build a relationship, I can talk to them, I can make people feel at ease, I can show and demonstrate my respect for them. But often that's more difficult when we're working in this way, through a screen. We also know that using a screen like this is dependent upon the technology being efficient and working appropriately, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Yesterday, for instance, in a conversation with a student in India, the system just completely broke down halfway through, making life very difficult for me and for her. So we need to accept that that is a problem at the moment. But it's not a problem that will be here forever. There will be a time when we can get back to interviewing people face to face. So I hope through this series of seminars and workshops that we're going to have, which are being organized by Rajesh and Pooja and Ratika and Johnson, that we will have an opportunity to hear how researchers are using these qualitative methods to understand the lives of people who've been marginalized, those who face challenges in our society, and how by collecting data and these methods, we can go that extra step to planning to make life far better for them. There's no point, I don't believe, in us doing this kind of research unless we have a commitment to change. This isn't just about collecting data and maybe writing papers and getting our names in academic journals. This is much more about collecting data and then taking action to change the lives of the people we're concerned about. So I know that my young colleagues there who've been organising these seminars are deliberately targeting people who can give us initially some examples of how they've conducted research that has tried to change the lives of the people that they're motivated by and interested in. We will undoubtedly hear the word data from time to time. And I think a good principle to remember is that data belongs to the individual from whom it's collected. If I want to know about your life, I need you to tell me about your life. And that is collecting your information, your data. And we always need to be respectful of the people with whom we are working, and to make sure that our duty of care is such that we ensure that they are respected and that they feel valued through the process of qualitative research. I don't want to say anything more now because I think we need to hear Johnson, and then after we've heard Johnson, to have a discussion so that these principles can come out and can start to build a platform upon which this series of workshops and seminars can be conducted. So I'm going to be quiet now and switch off my camera and hand over to Johnson, who's going to do his presentation for us. So over to you, Johnson. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for your introduction. Actually, this is very good that we are having this seminar series for our colleagues in India. So I will take point from Richard that why we do this inclusive research, because research is not about just publishing or just collecting information from people. It's also based on which we do some actions. In fact, currently I want to share a small story what we are doing now here in Kerala, because I am working with University of Sussex for the last 2 years, the COVID years. We are doing a research project with fishes. It's a co-production of knowledge, actually. The scientific community and fishers and social scientists work together to understand the weather patterns of the sea and how fishes are safe and etc. So after we collected data, data collection actually finished last month. Then we were trying to think, so how this data can be useful for the fishes. So then for the last couple of weeks, we are actually meeting several policy makers, because fishes, we identify one issue is that the scientists do the forecast, but that forecasts are not weather forecasts. That forecasts are actually not very useful to the fishes. And fishers demand that science which useful to them. So then they can take care of the scientific information, and they follow the guidelines given by the scientific community and etc. So that is the one area we are trying to kind of bridge the gap between the researchers or the scientists and the fishers. The traditional, usual fishers who are actually go for fishing. So that kind of gap need to be filled. So when we, like what Richard said, so when we do this kind of research, if the participants here, the fishers themselves are actually not part of the process of research, it may not make a lot of changes in their lives or their understanding of the science which they need for them. So I thought we are actually meeting several people now, the policy, the government department, including the Chief Minister of Kerala and also the Fisheries Minister. I thought I should share before my presentation. That is something connected to what Richard just said. Okay, in this session, I'm going to talk about, or I was asked to present today about how to do an effective review of literature. So what are the parameters we need to consider? I start with an ethics of conducting review of literature, which is very important, I think. And why we do literature review? There are two main types of literature review, that is systematic and narrative literature review. So what are the different approaches adopted by people when they do research and making choices, what should be used in their final research writing, or what should be used in the production when they do the literature review chapter or even academic paper. So what are the qualities, main qualities? How do we say that, oh, this is a very good literature review? So what are the important qualities of this literature review? So these are the 5 aspects I'm going to talk about. I also tried to give examples, but unfortunately I could not play my video. I tried earlier, but it was not working. So I'm not able to play the video, no worries. So I will talk, so you have to patiently listen to me. Okay, here I'm going to talk about the research misconduct when we do even literature review. So before we actually do the literature review, we have to consider these ethical principles. As we know, unethical behavior is not acceptable in research. So there are consequences if you are not following ethical behavior in research. So these are the 5 important aspects in relation to literature review I'm going to talk about. One is sometimes people don't give credit to the sources they actually collect the information from, written information from. So therefore, they may falsify the data, or they don't give enough credit to the people who actually written the original sources. They try to hide. When you do that, it's actually a kind of unethical behavior when you do the literature review. So another aspect is that sometimes, especially in our Indian context, there is no academic voice of the people. I mean, the researchers' voices sometimes missing when they do the writing. So, which is we can include an aspect of academic integrity. So often, the researcher is not becoming a kind of authorship of the knowledge that person is producing. So, therefore, we need to be aware of this. And another aspect would be like we have to use relevant reference guides. There are different referencing styles are used by researchers, and there's Harvard referencing and other types of Chicago. There are different APA. There are different reference guides are used in research. So we have to be aware of what kind of reference guidelines we are using for, researching or literature search, and also how to cite those literature sources in our writing. So we have to be very careful about this. Again, each institution has their own referencing style, though they may be.
Sorry, Johnson, if I may interrupt, your slides are not moving.
Okay. Can you see my? Are you seeing my first slide or not? I mean, second slide, research.
No, we are just, at least for me, it's just the first slide where it says effective review of research, of literature, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, I don't know what's happening here.
I'm not sure about the others, but.
So what about others? Can you see this?
It was the same, sir. It was
No,
the first
yeah,
slide.
Johnson, can't see the first slide, only the title slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me try again.
We can't see, only first.
Okay, can you see now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, is the slide moving now? Can you see the next one?
You can just see research misconduct now.
No, you cannot see the purpose of the literature review now.
No.
Okay, so there is a problem here. Oh, sorry. Just it was working earlier actually. So can you see now this purpose of the literature review and the next one?
How do I justify my research is what we see now.
Okay, what about this? The purpose of the literature, can you see?
No.
I'm just checking whether I can move the slides or not.
No, your slides
No.
are not moving. No.
Okay, so I think it's not working from my end. So I will do something else. Okay, in that case, I will go this way.
Try going back to the first one and scrolling down, Johnson. Sometime it works.
Now? Can you see now?
No, not at all.
No. Okay. I think I can go like this, maybe. Yeah. So you can see now research misconduct, right?
Yeah, it's working now, Johnson.
So you can see the next one as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I will go like this. Okay. So I was talking about referencing guides. Now, the research is also, we have to be open to criticism as well, meaning that there may be some researchers with their evidence may question our own findings. So we have to open to take those points. That's the way the science actually become a dynamic process, and new findings and new knowledge will come up. So another very huge issue in several countries are facing now the plagiarism. People write others' work as their own. In India, there are very strict plagiarism penalizing practices are adopted by UGC since 2018. So meaning if you are plagiarizing works of others more than 10%, you have to go through some kind of disciplinary procedures. So people are taking this very serious. So we have to be very careful all these points when you do the literature review. So here in this slide, I would like to give you why we do literature review. For three main purposes. One is for justification of our research, why we are doing this research, how this research actually being developed or informed by what others have already written, or maybe something we are building upon from what others have already written. So there we have an opportunity to produce a new knowledge. So why you are conducting the research, that's very important. So we justify our research based on literature review. And second purpose of doing literature review is also we choose some methods of data collection. So why we are using this methods of collection? So in order to ensure a particular research method or particular research approach for example, ethnography or case study approach or interview. So we may need to say that, okay, when people conduct similar research of mine, they are actually using these kind of methods. Therefore, I'm also considering, or I'm also applying the same methodology in my research. So that's the way we have to identify what are the key issues when other researchers, when they conduct research, similar nature of mine or ours. So there is also another purpose would be we have to demonstrate the relationship between the research already reported or research already conducted and also our own research. So these are the three main purposes people usually conduct literature review for. So I will go through one by one actually. So I have thinking about this, if a student or a new researcher, when they try to do kind of literature review, what are the process they have to follow? That was in my mind when I prepared these slides. So you're asking this question, how do I justify my research? Okay, how do I justify? Is the topic clear and well defined? So how do you make this topic clear? Then, so you relate your research with what's happening around the world in research world. Maybe if you're doing some country focus, you relate to that, what's happening in your country in terms of your research you are doing. Or if you're doing a particular theoretical approach in your research, you will link that with your own research. So that is the way we try to give a meaning or give a clarity to our topic. Then also we ask this question, does it involve a problem? So what I am trying to address, what issue I am trying to address through my research. So what is my hypothesis? How this hypothesis actually constructed or developed. So then, for example, if I say my own research, when I started doing my PhD research in 2006, then I had this issue of whether the children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder actually exist in India, because I have noticed that many literature sources are talking about children with ADHD in the country context. Mostly those research are from North American context or Western context. So based on which I take this idea, so what about India? What about Eastern context? What about non-Western context? So there are children with this kind of behavioral patterns. So can we say that there are children with ADHD actually exist in this cultural context? Therefore, I'm going to do this research. So the literature actually gives me a clue where I should go with my research. So I need to do more exploration in this area. Then I will find something very new from the Indian context. So that is the way we actually make the topic of research genuine or relevance to our context, or making something interesting findings will be coming out from our research. So that is the literature review process actually helps to make these points or clear or answer to these questions well. Mostly this we do when we do the introduction. If you're writing for a paper, an academic paper, we will do that in our introduction part. Or if you're writing in a thesis or master's dissertation, we mostly do this, follow these points maybe in our literature review section or chapter. Okay. Then how do I ensure strong research methods and analysis? Again, asking these couple of questions. So we may ask this question like, is the choice of methods and research technique I'm using here or you're using here, so is that suited the kind of problem you are actually investigating about? So if you are doing a research about Adivasi community, so if you are using a questionnaire, is an appropriate method of collecting data from. So what literature say? So when other people, when they conduct a research, are they using questionnaire, or are they using kind of in-depth interviews or ethnographic interviews? Meaning going to the field and talking to the people. Are these kind of methods giving them more information or useful information for their research? Again, the literature actually give a clue there. Then another question you may ask, is the description of methods adopted clear enough to replicate? So for example, I'm using this particular approach, or I'm using case study here. So whether the case study, if I'm using, will that replicate the information actually collected by other researchers doing research in a similar nature? So mostly these aspect we write more in the methodology chapter or methodology section of our academic paper. So how do I demonstrate the relation between my research and others? Okay, so then we ask this question. So whether we discuss the research within the context of the literature. So are we identifying any new insights or any consistency or inconsistency? Are we refuting some claims already made by the researchers in order to build new insights? These kind of questions we ask. Or are there any implication for policy or practice being explored because of that is something not there in the literature? And therefore, we are giving some suggestions for further research, which building our research and comparing with the research already done by others. So it's mostly come under a findings or discussion, even sometimes the conclusion part as well. So then people ask this question is what the literature review is. As you can see, literature is an ongoing process. It starts from the beginning. When you write the conclusion chapter, the literature you have to keep in your mind. So this is an ongoing process. It takes place throughout our research process. So we know we all are experienced researchers here. So we know this process. So this actually informs all aspects of research. How to develop your key research questions or instruments constructions or methodology you adopt in your research, or how you link your research with others. So it informs all aspects of the research. So critical and questioning is very important when you do the literature. We ask a lot of questions like this. So are they giving enough evidence to make this claim? What are the missing links here? So which I identify through my critical reading or further questioning. So what is already being written. So sometimes when we read the literature, we may draw ideas from several disciplines. Yeah, so we may not be focusing on just one discipline. For example, education is a kind of I classify as a kind of interdisciplinary one. So here we include more psychological aspect or sociological aspect and also developmental theories as well, because education is something very important for a nation's development. Again, if I give my own example as a PhD research which I conducted, so my research actually built upon several disciplines, because ADHD is constructed as a psychiatric disorder. Some people consider it as a developmental disorder. Some arguments within the social science disciplines, it is a kind of a social construction or cultural construction as well. So as a researcher from education discipline, I have to consider all these disciplinary elements when I did my research. So again, literature gives all this information to us. Sometimes a literature review can be also a methodology. The meaning, so research itself become, or literature review itself become a kind of a paper or an interesting piece of work itself. So Richard has published a lot of articles like that based on IRIS project. So for academic journals and etc. So there are two types of review of literature, mainly used like narrative kind of literature review. This is what I think mostly qualitative researchers focus more on. We write the narrative style of, or we do a kind of narrative style of literature review. So meaning we summarize or critic literature related to our research focus. So for example, if you're doing research about marginalization of children from the poor community in school systems. So most of our literature related to that. So we collect research information based on literature from relevant databases, and we use appropriate materials, which is something to do with our key focus of our research. So this narrative style of literature is kind of detailed overview about the research area. So what are the gaps identified in the literature, the research. So based on which sometimes we also refine our research questions and even refine our methods we use. So that's a kind of narrative kind of literature review. So in a systematic or quantitative type of literature review, we have actually following a certain parameters. So based on which we sometimes eliminate some literature sources or articles. We say, okay, this is not, these articles don't meet my criteria, therefore I eliminate them. So this is a kind of a quantitative style of literature review. So I just need to go very quickly. Okay, so in keywords are very important and when you do research literature review. So they are very helpful to identify the important area of research, something related to your research focus. So keywords are very important in when you do the literature search. There are also several search engines we use. Google Scholar is a very useful one. These are all social science, different databases people use to identify literature. Sometimes we get a lot of very useful or even free materials from these search engines. But of course, there sometimes also we may need to pay as well. So we need to be aware of that. So here is the point. Then students sometimes ask these questions, which one we actually use, whether we should use book as our main resource for literature review, or we have to identify journal articles, or can we use conference proceedings also? Can we use newspaper articles? So these questions sometimes our students ask. So therefore, we have to look at this this slide. It's giving actually looking at the strength and weakness of each source of information. For example, peer-reviewed journal papers and book chapters are considered as the most trusted source of information or highly quality one, because there will be kind of degree of accuracy in methods and interpretation. Because of that, they follow peer-reviewed process. So when there are any issues in a particular articles, then the peer reviewers give some guidance based on which they refine their book chapters or journal papers. So that is why this is considered to be a kind of a more quality one source of information when you consider literature review. Sole authored books are another type. Again, this is most often when sole authored books, they follow kind of authors' main point of view mostly. So there may be some element of bias. Again, that person might have written his or her own expert perspective. So therefore, this source, we need to ask several questions because of they are not following peer-reviewed process. So I'm not going to talk everything here. So these are the other order of, the quality-wise order we follow when we do the literature review. So critical reading actually goes beyond description. So the criticality is very key here. So we ask more questions in relation to what is being produced or what we are reading. So often we challenge the assertions made by the authors. There are a lot of assertions we can see when we read. So, for example, in Kerala context, if I say, people often say that Kerala is a 100% literacy state. But I know many children are still, out of school, especially children from the Adivasi community and children from the coastal community, and also children with disabilities. So not all children with disabilities are in school in Kerala. There are children, either they are not able to find appropriate accommodations in school, or the parents are not willing to promote their education, or the state has not provided enough mechanisms to accommodate this individual into school. So these kind of assertions made by authors can be challenged when we do the research. And the last point here, in this slide, I would like to say there are some kind of power relationship that exists in literature. So, for example, again, if I talk about my own PhD research, I have to face these challenges from discipline. For example, if medical professionals, if they write about ADHD, people often believe that that is something true, or that is something cannot be questioned. So I have faced this when I had a conversation with many people in my context, where I asked these questions. So, for example, what kind of cultural validity and reliability you used when you transfer this American Psychiatric Association's DSM-4 criteria? Now it is four criteria for identifying children with ADHD. Sometimes these professionals don't ask these kind of questions. So what is available, or this American Psychiatric Association, for example, well-respected institution or organization, therefore whatever comes from there must be true. That kind of assertion should be questioned as well. So that shows some kind of power relationship within the academic community. So the questions for critical review might be like, how appropriate was the sample used in the research? So, for example, are they using small sample or bigger sample? Are they generalizing it, or are they doing case studies? So these kind of questions we have to ask when you read the literature. Sometimes people use a large sample, meaning 100 interviews. Then, so because of that number, sometimes people think that, okay, they can generalize to the whole district or maybe a state. But it may not be, because how you actually conduct a research, how you collected data, from whom you collected, all these are matters when you make generalization based on your research. So this question is very important. How appropriate was the sample used in the research by these people who wrote this article, who wrote this chapter in the book. So how appropriate were their methods used? Are they used and appropriate methods for this particular research? So have they considered other methods of data collection? So all this we need to ask when we do the literature review critically. Are the findings justified by the data presented? Are the findings discussed in order to clarify meaning, which is very important, especially if you're working with children with disability. So even the terminology like autism, sometimes not very clear to many people. Then within, as we know, 2 children with autism are actually different as well. So one is applied to one person may not be applicable to others. So in order to make that clear, experience from or collecting data from people based on their experiences are very, very important. Like Richard earlier mentioned. So are the conclusions reached justified with the evidence provided by the authors? So there is another question we have to ask when we do the critical review. So do they provide enough evidence to make this claim or make these assertions? So do they justify their findings based on evidence? These kind of questions are very useful when we do the literature review. So next, I'm going to give a kind of a practical aspect of doing literature review here. So I usually follow a kind of approach here. What I call this is an annotated bibliography before I do actual literature review. So when I identify a particular research paper or a chapter in a book, so I make this this table like this. So here in the first part, I write reference. Usually I write the full reference. Then I ask this question, what is the aim or focus, or what's the such question of this author actually focused his or her work on? So in this case, I'm going to give an example study I referred for work. Impact of night work on women's fertility function. That is the focus of this research. And I looked at the methodology. They use quantitative self-report survey and schedules, collected data from 151 nurses, for example. And this is a methodology they use. So what are their findings? So this is a very simple thing when we make literature review process. It's a first stage before we actually do the literature review. This I found very useful. So what I found here as a result, no association between night work and menstrual regularity or fertility. So next will be theme. What themes are coming here? So fertility might be a theme. So then criticism or limitation will be relatively small sample, and the research actually conducted in a single location. So therefore, I need to be very careful about generalizing the findings from this source to another source, for example. So that is one way of doing. So like that, I will make a list of references here, one by below. So then it is very helpful for me to compare and contrast and make writing. When I do the literature review, maybe the narrative way of writing this information will be very helpful to construct my paragraphs within the literature review chapter or literature review section. So there is also another way of doing this. Some students, especially master students, they use this kind of approach also. So for example, they will keep a sheet of paper. Within the sheet of paper, they make the annotated bibliography like I showed earlier. Then they keep all these papers on the table, then compare and contrast. That is another. This is also some students, especially master's level students, find very useful. So when you do the annotation, so we know that simply making a list of references is not very helpful. So you need a system that helps you to use the references most effectively. So this is an example again here. So this is a study conducted by Jones and Harper in 2011. So this is a full references is given here. The curriculum instruction modification science for students with visual impairment. So journal science education. So the reference is given. Then keywords, like I mentioned earlier, keywords are very important. So keywords sometimes actually a kind of signpost or navigation tools to identify more literature, or also constructing our own themes when we write the literature review section or chapters. So planning and differentiation, visual impairment are the key words here. So then I asked this question, so is it relevant to my study? Section on curriculum planning provide discussion on difficulties for access for people's visual impairment. So that is something which will be very useful. Therefore, I use that. Oh, that section is very important for my, when I write about curriculum planning for people's with visual impairments, this section will be very useful. Like that, the annotation will be very useful when you do the literature review. So again, people ask why we cite and reference. This actually I taken from the guidance from the University of Northampton website. So why we cite and reference? So of course we make an argument or make a claim or to provide evidence. So that is why we cite. So when we do the citation, we actually support, in order to support an argument or make a claim or in order to provide evidence. Or also we acknowledge others' ideas or works. So we have to show that this is something very relevant and this is what people are actually writing about. Therefore, I am acknowledging others' work, something very related to my own work. So, and another way when we do cite and reference, the question is why we cite and reference, because to allow others to locate the sources you used, so evaluate interpretation. So you give the references, give the sources of information you gathered from, then you interpret the findings or the research of others, then you are giving opportunity for other researchers who read your work, evaluate your own interpretation based on the sources you have given. And of course, you show the breadth and depth of your reading. Yeah. So, and avoiding plagiarism, etc. So I will finish a couple more slides and I will finish. Then how to cite and do and reference. This is an example given here. Good reviews show your use and analysis level literature. It is important identify and contrast the key issues surrounding your topic. So here I'm giving an example here. What is most important, the whole class teaching or a small group approach, which is better? So here, 3 group of authors actually giving different information. There are some similarities as well as some dissimilarity as well. If you look at the third person, Howard David suggests that classroom group is a complex issue and the teachers need to analyze lesson content and individual preferred learning styles when considering approach methodologies. So that is a way we write to give a kind of analysis and giving contrast with other researchers, which is very important. So again, these are some useful phrases or words will be used for when you do the literature review. So give a structure or cohesion from one to another, how they are related, or to provide a logical progression. This is very important. Okay, so this is my kind of last slide. So referencing checklist is another important aspect. So we have to check which reference system we use, our referencing or any other type of referencing guidance we use. We check with that how they follow the referencing style. So we have to use full details of source used at the time you use it. That is why the earlier when I showed that annotative bibliography, we have to provide that referencing, full referencing. Otherwise, we may miss a lot of very important information. So build your reference list as you research and write. Then cite sources within the text as you write, which is also very important. So if you're using captions, images, table, diagram, again, you have to cite the source. And proofreading your citation, check against your work. Are they relevant? Are you just making this reference list, or actually you are providing appropriate references in relation to what you are writing your literature review? So be consistent, make sure you apply the same format constantly throughout, and check you have cited every source you have used. And some final comments will be like, have you accessed the most recent literature of relevance to your topic, as well as seminal sources from the past? Meaning, so are you using some key literature which is very relevant to your work? Are you using them? Or are you also using some recent literature in relation to your topic, which is very important. Often PhD examinations, these kind of questions sometimes will be very helpful. I mean, is the literature be coherent? Are you following a logical progression? So how you are justifying or how you are relating each other, how you follow one aspect to the other. So literature, we should provide that. So does it show how the ideas and findings are developed, or is it merely a list of books and articles? So that is very important. So ask this question as well: is the review critical enough? So are you justifying? Are you critically looking at how you identify the evidences provided by these authors? So all these kind of questions are very helpful when you do the literature review. So does the review briefly evaluate or show how the inquiry relate to other studies? How your study or the literature you are writing, so how related to other studies? So these kind of final questions are very important after you did a kind of first level of literature review writer. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. And I thought, yeah, 20 minutes we can have questions or anything you want to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnson. That was very informative. Thank you for putting in the effort to make that presentation to us all, which I'm sure many people will have found interesting. So can we ask then for people listening at the moment to come in with any questions or comments that they have for Johnson, please, or other things that we could discuss generally amongst ourselves. So any comments, please?
Members, please ask your questions or any suggestions you would like, as Professor Sir just now mentioned. Don't put it in the chat box. You can always unmute and ask.
You're not very clear, Rajesh. I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying. The microphone, I think, might be a problem.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Dear
hello.
Rajesh and Professor Rose, good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you. So let's hear what you have to say then.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor. I missed your speech. I joined in between when Johnson was speaking.
Now you heard the
So
best
very,
part then.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You did, you did. Yeah, thank you very much, Johnson, for your elaborate description. And I will say that it's a very good narration about the importance of citation and references while writing while writing the review of literature part. It will be very, very useful to the budding researchers also. And you have very well clearly uh, argued that how much it is important uh, to make a claim or to support or reject assertion based on the literature. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to ask you one thing. Even Professor Richard also can supplement it. Whether reference or the bibliography, we have two things, reference section as well as bibliography. Which one will be very suitable for the thesis as well as research paper, and which one will be useful for the book chapter, sir?
Yeah.
Reference and bibliography.
Actually, people use some people are advised to use both referencing and bibliography. So bibliography meaning you have read a lot of literature in relation to your work, but you don't use them or you don't cite them as your source of reference in your book chapter or in your writing. Okay, so that is called referencing. So referencing meaning you only provide what you cited in your work, yeah, the reference. But the bibliography, the entire work you provide. So I would suggest referencing is more you have to give, because that is what you are expected to do for academic purpose and even for your PhD thesis and master's dissertation. But I also noticed that some researchers prefer the bibliography list as well, because whether the person has considered other materials before they referenced the materials they used actually for the citations and referencing. So that's what I think. Maybe Richard, you want to add anything? You're muted, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I think one of the important things to say here is always make sure that you read the advice to authors if you're going to submit to a journal. Different journals have different requirements, not just in terms of what you present, but the format you present it in as well. So whilst one journal may require APA style, another will want Harvard, another might want Chicago, for instance. But most academic journals will only want lists of references. References, as Johnson said, that have been cited in the text. Sometimes if you're writing for a book, if it's a sole authored book, or even sometimes if you're writing a chapter for a book, you may be asked to provide further reading and a more detailed bibliography, which would obviously include work that you've not cited. So I would say the important thing is to be very clear about what the editorial expectation is of the journal or the book that you're writing for. But it's a very important question.
Thank you, Professor and Ms. Johnson. Thank you.
Any other
Hi, sir.
observations? Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Nasir here from Kashmir.
Hi, Nasir.
Hi, Nasir.
So I have a question. It's regarding. Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. Yeah. So I have a question. It's about the impact factor of the research, right? So when we talk about review of literature, so my question is, what are some basic principles to increase the impact factor of our research in relation to literature review? So what are the some basic steps we can keep in mind so that we can improve the impact factor?
Yeah, actually I have not much idea about this. Richard, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you look at lists of journals, they tend to have impact factors and they vary quite a lot in terms of their high impact. high impact generally is measured in terms of the amount of use and referencing that is made of journals articles. So if you write a journal for an article and then it gets referenced by 100 other researchers in other good quality journals, that has an impact on the rating of the journal. So if you're going to write for high impact journals, then clearly they are the most difficult to get published in, usually. Not always, actually, but quite often they're difficult to get your work published in, because they will look thoroughly at the research methods that you've used. They will expect research that has reasonable size samples and good justification for the sample size used. They will question every aspect of the research very carefully. I would, however, issue some warning here. As a researcher, particularly doing qualitative research, one of the questions I would always ask is, who is the audience I really want to reach? So if I take the research, which I know is done by one of our colleagues who's been there today, Sulata Ajit-Sakandas, her research has been very much about differentiation in the classroom. And it seems to me that her writing is really important for professionals who want to improve schools. And therefore, she doesn't just want her papers to be read by academics in universities. If her paper is only read by university professors, they have less impact on classroom practice than teachers do. So it's not just a case of looking for high impact journals, it's more a case of looking for journals where your work can have the greatest impact in the community you're trying to serve. I think this is a really important principle for this group, because as an inclusion research network, we are trying to get people more included in society, in whether it's in education or healthcare or the social aspects of life or the economic welfare. Then our research will have most impact if it does engage with practitioners and parents and other people as well. Now, one way that we can do this, of course, is to publish our research at several levels. It's not unusual to publish a research paper in a high impact journal and give a report of the same research, maybe in a professional journal aimed at parents or teachers. So impact is really important. But I think the most important thing for us as an organization, and for those of us who are committed to social justice through research, is to publish in places where we're likely to have greatest effect on change in people's lives. I hope that helps to some extent, Nasir.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay. I think we've time for perhaps another one or two questions or comments.
Yes, sir. Hello, good evening, sir.
Hello, Ravati.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Good evening to Richard Rose, Sir Johnson, sir. Good evening to all. Sir, I have a basic, simple question. Like, if after selecting the review of literature for my article or for dissertation purpose, so after selecting the article, now we have been heard to rewrite the article due to plagiarism. So how I need to get a basic general idea about this, how we should be proceed for rewriting the article, how that is important. We when we review, we get the abstract of the article. Rewriting article, full article, if we are reading, going through, then we are able to rewrite it. Almost we can limit. But if we are getting the abstract, then it's difficult to rewrite the article. How this is important? That's my one first question.
So your question is how it is important to rewriting your article. Once you are asked to, then you are getting only the abstract, right? So actually,
yes, sir.
So the basic principles would be, so if you don't have a full article in relation to your work, so then you have to look at the expectation of the journals. So what they are actually asking you to do. So in order to rewrite.
I think on the plagiarism side, if you're working for a university, if you're submitting work through a university or you're working for a university, they would normally have subscribed to a mechanism that will check your work for plagiarism. So, for instance, many universities in Europe use a system called Turnitin, which I know one or two of my colleagues there are familiar with, where you put your work through this system which reads it, and then it will come up with a percentage score. So if it says you've got 3% plagiarism, then that's nothing to worry about. If it says you've got 60%, then clearly there is an issue there of blatant plagiarism. So in terms of making sure you're not plagiarizing, I think it's quite important to do two things. One is, if you are going to take an extract from somebody else's work, you need to clearly reference it. You need to say, this is from the work of Smith and Jones 2018 or whatever, and make that clear both in the text and in your list of references. I think in terms of plagiarism, one of the things where people sometimes fall down is they simply read somebody else's work and try to rephrase it. Literature should be used to support what you say, your original words, rather than trying to interpret what other people have said all the time. So you write your own work and then you support it with the literature of other established researchers. So really, plagiarism is only an issue, I think, if you are not actually using your own words and your own data to actually construct your argument. But I can see that in some traditions, there's been almost a subservience to the published word. So I've met people who say, I have to use the words from this paper because it was written by my tutor, for instance. Now that seems to me to be an unacceptable practice and one that we need to avoid. But plagiarism should be easily enough avoided as long as you're very careful not to copy directly what other people have said or just simply change their words.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, may I ask a question, please? Pushpanjali. I'm Pushpanjali, sir.
Hi, Pushpanjali, please.
Yes, sir. So, what should be the number of literature reviewed for a particular work? I don't know. What is the limit? Is there any limit also?
Yeah, I'd go back to my earlier point, and that is understand what the journal usually does. I mean, reading the journal and seeing their expectations is the best way. But one of the difficulties with your question is there are some subjects where there's an awful lot of literature. I mean, if you were writing a paper about teaching reading to infant-age children, to very young children, there are thousands and thousands of references available to you. If, on the other hand, you were writing something about, I don't know, left-handedness in children with Down syndrome, you probably got very little to refer to. So it is quite difficult. I mean, generally speaking, you will find that there are one or two seminal writers in any topic you're investigating. And use of their research is obviously important. But just simply adding lots and lots of references to make the paper look good, I don't think is a sound policy. You need to use references that have a clear strengthening of your own work. But I would say always look at the journal you're going to submit a paper to, see what they're normally getting for their papers. And if they've got 10 to 20 references, then try and stick within that limit. Don't go beyond it. You need to be familiar with what the editor expects. And the last thing I'd say about that is most editors of journals are very amenable to you contacting them and checking on issues like this. I've been on editorial boards of several journals, and we sometimes get inquiries, is it okay to have this many references, or I seem to have a lot of references, is this a problem? Then check with the editors. They're usually very supportive and will give you advice in that way.
Okay, thank you, sir. And supposing we have reviewed the literature, and do we have to summarize the literature reviewed before going to the methodology?
Normally in a paper, you would have a section on the literature, a brief summary of the literature, but in most journal articles, that's not going to be the majority of the paper. Most of the paper will be focused on your research.
Yeah, in the dissertation, sometimes we do kind of summarizing literature review. Then you link with the next chapter.
Yeah.
So that happens, yeah, in the dissertation or thesis when you write. Yeah.
Yeah, that's different in a thesis than what it would be writing for a journal. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I have a question, sir. We were just talking about these plagiarism checkers. Is there some reliable plagiarism checker that is available for free, sir? Because when the organization, like in your mention, like we do not have access to it. So is there something where we can use it, something that is available for free?
I don't think anything available for free. Actually, universities buy the system of plagiarism.
Yes.
So many universities in India also actually buy this and ask their students to submit their thesis or dissertation work through this system. I think, like Richard mentioned, in India also people use Turnitin. Recently, a lot of universities actually use it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, there are things available on the internet. I'm just trying to think what they're called. Oh, I know that there's one called Plagiarism Detector. I've never used it, but I mean, obviously, if you don't have access to a university, I would certainly explore some of these and see if they are any good. And they are free, I know. So if you haven't got access to a university, it would be worth doing that. Actually, that might be something that we look at as an organization and maybe try and post some details up on a website or something. I think maybe Rajesh can give us some advice on that if we can find some.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It's called the Plagiarism Detector. Is it?
Yes, that's the only one that I'm aware of. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll check it, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we've come officially to the end of our time for tonight's session, and I just wonder whether this has been obviously a successful first meeting, and I think we need to do a couple of things. One is perhaps Rajesh, you've been recording, I note. Can you advise people on where they will be able to gain access to the recording? And the second thing is maybe you or Ritika or Pooja or Johnson said a lot. You could be forgiven for being quiet for a while. Perhaps you could say something about others of these events that you've got planned. Okay, and then we'll close. So Rajesh, you first, please.
Yes, sir. Am I audible now, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this video will be available. First, I'll just convert it into the YouTube, and then I will share it, the link, through email and also through WhatsApp group. Secondly, just noticed that we got increase of around 3 more members from the first meeting. So today we had 23. Right now it is 19, but 23 we had at the start of the meeting. So I think people are slowly getting into it and are joining the IIRN group. I think we'll be able to cover again some 10 to 20 members again in the coming webinar that is scheduled to be held. I'll just share the calendar of events. I'll just share it.
Blocks,
yes,
they work for Matthew, I think. They work for differently abled children.
So I think most of you are able to see it, the PDF document, that is calendar of events virtually for the year 2021-22, and we have kept the time as 6 to 7:30 p.m. through Google Meet, because that is the thing that we are able to do it, because either NIPVD does it or through our LipMed. So we have these two things available. Next month, that is 29th, as was decided by the board members, qualitative research methodology, that is investigating the educational opportunities for first generation learners in rural Maharashtra, India, by Dr. Ratika Malkhani, followed by feedback and question answer session. So that is the next thing that is going to come. We have already confirmed for 3rd January 2022. Simultaneously, we have also confirmed from Sulata Madam for her presentation on 7th February 2022. I think the only one that is to be confirmed is from Dr. Sumati Ravindranath, which is scheduled in March 7th, 2022. So I think by April, then we'll think of having something wherein we can physically meet and we can organize some event. I think by the time things will be open. Richard sir, is it okay?
Yes, well done, Rajesh. I think that's clear enough to everybody. And can I just say thank you to you and Ratika, Pooja and Johnson for organising the programme so far. And I'm sure we will attract a lot more new members as the months go on. So thank you to everybody for being here today and for contributing to this session. It's been a pleasure to be with you all today, and thank you particularly to Johnson for all the work that he's been here. Oh, actually, Professor Narayan has just wanted to say something.
Yeah. Congratulations, Johnson. That was a very nice presentation, very comprehensive, and I think it is very well done. Rajesh, I just have one comment, may I? This flyer that we are receiving, when it is closer to the date, if it could be sent more frequently, I think it will be in the surface of the people's memory. You sent it very, very early and you have maintained the time, which is very, very good that you sent it much, much earlier as soon as it was planned. And in between, there had been a lull and people might not have taken it, okay, hoga ki nahi hoga, will it happen or will it not happen? So if it could continue to have a periodic reminders like first flyer, second flyer, third flyer, and closer to the date, if it could be alternate days or some such thing, I think we'll be able to get more people. It is just that people get so busy and it may go to the bottom of their memory. I appreciate it. You sent it much earlier. The first one that came was much earlier. Then in between, we had a kind of nothing about the IIRN activity. So if this goes frequently, it also, number one, people will remember to block the date and be there. And number two, we get more visibility. IIRN gets more visibility. Yeah. I just thought I'll share this with you. And word of mouth, I'll spread the word, definitely. Once it comes, my part of job, I will reach out to people, young researchers and professionals that this is coming, please come and join. I'll certainly do that also as my part of responsibility. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Actually, I was just thinking that Dr. Nitika Mandirata would be taking preparing the flyers and sending it. So maybe busy because of other activities. So now what I've decided is I'll keep everything ready, right? Maybe in a day or two, and each month's flyer will be sent in advance, and frequently I will just.
That's the idea. Yeah.
And also through email also. Meanwhile, I have a request from Professor Rose sir that to keep what Jennifer was telling, like there was a period when we were not discussing anything or nothing was being shared in the WhatsApp group. Anything which relates to research or something or some documents which can be posted from your side or maybe from the mentor side in the group so that people get hooked it and they remember us.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. I think we need to be able to post things up onto a website so that we can actually start to build up a profile of work and references and the things that we've done. I'll post some ideas on that for you over the next few days, Rajesh.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Ratika ma'am, any final comments, or Pooja ma'am, any final comments from your side?
I just look forward to meeting everybody in 4 weeks' time when we'll be discussing the methodology from my research which I conducted. And thank you, Johnson. That was really informative. I think I learned a lot too about literature review, which is a weakness of mine anyway.
Very, very crisply covered, Johnson. Such an elaborate topic. You did a fantastic job.
Well done.
Dr. Johnson sir was to give me the PowerPoints so that I can just convert it into PDF and then share it to all the members, also through WhatsApp or through email. And while we are doing this, I'm actually trying to get the IIRN suite, Google suite, so that next meeting we can have from the IIRN Google suite link. That is what I'm trying. I'll try to purchase it, and then I'll try to send the link to all, so that today's technical errors will not happen next time.
Okay, thank you very much to everybody then, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting in a month's time. So thank you all very much.